This will be a fun class today. We are doing the Great Pyramid. Okay, the Great Pyramid was built about 2500 BCE. That's 4,500 years ago, by a pharaoh named Khufu. And it was one of the seven great wonders of the ancient world. It's the only one that's still standing. From 2500 until 1400 CE, which is about 4,000 years, it was the tallest man-made building in the world. Okay, the Great Pyramid, the direction is true north, meaning you can actually use the pyramids as a compass to tell the directions. Let's look at the architecture of the Great Pyramid. So the center is something called the King's Chamber. That's where the king's mummy rests in the sarcophagus. There's a grand gallery that gives you access to the King's Chamber, and then a slope, and then it's a pyramid structure. And on the top of the pyramid is what is called the benben, or the Pyramidion, okay, the Pyramidion, okay, and it is extremely significant culturally and religiously in Egypt, because in Egyptian mythology, the religion, the creator god Atum, he's known as Atum, he's also known as Ra, the sun god, first came into existence on the benben. So imagine a large, dark ocean, and there's nothing, and then suddenly emerges a mound, okay, called a benben, and that's where comes the creator god, Atum, or Ra. Okay, that's one legend. The other legend is from the dark ocean of space comes down a benben, and on top of it rests Atum, okay? So this idea of the Pyramidion, the benben, it is central to the idea of creation in Egyptian mythology. So this is an extremely powerful and beautiful monument to Egyptian culture. Architecturally, Napoleon, who visited the Great Pyramid, he calculated that if you took all the stones from the Great Pyramid, you could actually build a wall around the perimeter of France. There's more material in the Great Pyramid except for two structures. The first structure is the Great Wall of China. There's more stone in the Great Wall of China, okay? And there's more stone, there's more material in the Three Gorges Dam, also in China. Okay? And it took them about 26 years to build this pyramid. So today, in today's class, I'm going to look at three questions. The first question is, how did they build this? Because it's still with us today. You can actually go to Egypt and visit the Great Pyramid. Second question is, why did they build this? What was the purpose? And the third question is, why did they stop building the pyramids? Okay, so those are the three questions we're looking at today. How was it built? Why was it built? And why did the Egyptians stop building the pyramids? So, how it was built is an extremely controversial question that has plagued historians and Egyptologists and archaeologists for hundreds of years, okay? And originally, a Greek historian by the name of Herodotus proposed the idea the pyramid was built in steps, okay? So it was first a step pyramid, and then using pulleys, they pull the stones up, okay? And it was the accepted idea for the longest time because there was no better idea. But architecturally, that has been disproven, okay? It can't work that way. Then, about 10 years ago, there was a French architect named Jean-Pierre Houdin, okay? H-O-U-D-I-N, Houdin. And he's an architect. He's never been to Egypt, doesn't speak Arabic, never studied Egypt. But his father and him were very interested in how the Great Pyramid was constructed. So he came up with this theory. And they've run computer simulations and discovered this to be true. And there's also a lot of physical evidence to suggest this theory is true. Okay, so this is how they built the Great Pyramid. What they did was they first constructed an external ramp in order to build the base. Okay, so you now have the base. And then from the base, what they did was they built two structures, okay? And this is what they call counterweights, okay? So these counterweights are like pulleys, which allows them to pull the stones up up high, okay? And then surrounding these two structures is what they call a eternal spiral ramp, okay? To carry the stones up. And so what they did was they basically built the pyramids from the inside out. And then once they built the structure, they covered it up with limestone so that it reflects in the sun. Okay? If you actually were living back then and you saw the pyramids from a distance, you would think it was the star that has come down on the planet Earth. Okay? So that's how they built the pyramid. But then this raises another interesting question is, how they come up with this plan, and how were they able to do this without blueprints and without basically writing or modern engineering techniques? And the answer is, if you think about it, what they did was they built a model right beside the pyramid, which allowed them to figure out how to build the larger pyramid, okay? But Egyptologists still believe this was not possible because they believe that Egyptians didn't have the intellectual capacity to imagine this to be true, okay? And I'll show you later on that they actually did, that we underestimate their imagination and their intellectual capacity, right? So that answers the first question pretty easily. How is it built? A more controversial question is, why was it built? And for the longest time, the accepted theory is this was a tomb. Okay, a tomb. The reason why is Egyptians believed in the afterlife. And so the theory is this pyramid is designed to ease the pharaoh's transition into the heavens, where he would become a star or a sun. And so the common phrase is, this is almost a resurrection machine where the pharaoh goes up to the sky, and then after a few centuries, he reincarnates inside the pyramid. And the structure is meant to accomplish this. And again, this is the generally accepted theory today. But there are three major problems with this theory, which basically discounts it, okay? The first major problem is there are about 100 pyramids in Egypt, okay? 100 or more, we don't know, okay? We have not found a mummy or a body inside any sarcophagus inside the pyramids. So this is a problem. If this is a tomb, why is there no body? We can't find the body, okay? So that's one problem. Second problem is this. For this to be a tomb, this implies that the pharaoh, because the pharaohs are divine, right? They are basically the emanation of God on earth. This means that when they come to the planet Earth and they become the pharaoh, their priority is to build their own tomb, right? Does that make any sense? They come to Earth and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to die, so I want to get out of here as soon as possible, so let's build that tomb, right? Now, the problem is that this would imply that the pharaoh sees the Egyptian people as his slaves, right? You exist in order for me to live. And so, but the problem is that in Egyptian mythology, gods are considered benefactors of the human race. Okay, so for example, Atum-Ra, he is the one who gave life to the world, but then his son, his descendant, Osiris, another god, gave civilization to Egypt. And then Horus, the son of Osiris, gave the institution of kingship to Egypt. Okay, so these gods come to earth in order to help the human race develop in some capacity. So it doesn't make any sense that the Pharaoh's primary purpose when he's on earth is to create a tomb, because that's a very selfish reason. Okay? Does that make sense? And the third problem with this is just pure logic. If you're a pharaoh and your primary concern is the afterlife, resurrecting yourself, and the pyramid is a primary means of accomplishing this, and it takes about 26 years or 30 years to build a pyramid, how can you be sure that you won't die before the pyramid is built? Right? That's a problem. Okay? So these are three logical problems. But again, Egyptologists insist that it is a tomb, okay? Primarily because of the way that Egyptians understand the afterlife. Okay, so here's some evidence to suggest it is a tomb. This is considered a writing of a pharaoh to his son about what the pyramid represents. So this is what he says. Make your grave well furnished and prepare thy place in the west. Okay, the west is where they go off to die. Look, death counts little for us. Okay, we can conquer death. Look, life is valued highly by us. We want to become immortal. The house of the dead, meaning the tomb, is for life. Okay, so the pyramid is what will make us immortal. All right, so this is again highly debated today. So logically speaking, it doesn't make sense that the pyramids are a tomb, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest it is a tomb. And because of this debate, different theories have been proposed as to the purpose of the pyramid. And there are lots of really strange theories out there, okay? Lots of really strange theories. One really interesting theory was proposed by a man named Nikola Tesla, the creator of electricity, basically. And his idea was this. He studied the architecture of the pyramid, and he proposed the pyramid was a battery system, okay? In order to create free, clean energy. And the theory is this, okay? The theory is, first of all, if you look at the king's chamber, the sound frequency in it is F sharp. And F sharp is also the frequency of planet Earth, okay? So it seems like the pyramid is attuned to the planet Earth. Second of all, if you look at where the pyramids are geographically, it's true north, okay? It's put in a place that matches the directions of the Earth. And so the theory is the direction of the pyramid is capturing the energy from the electromagnetic field that the Earth generates. Okay? And the third explanation is inside the pyramid are granite stones, and outside are limestones. And this is a perfect way to trap and store energy. Okay, so think of a solar panel where the sun and the moon reflects light onto the pyramids, and this energy is stored inside the pyramid. Okay? And so this is a great theory. And again, there are lots of people who believe in this because this is actually much more plausible than the tomb theory. But the problem with this, of course, is it doesn't work scientifically. And also you have the question of, if they produce all this free clean energy, what are they using it for? Okay? So this leaves us with a big question. Why did they build the Great Pyramid? And today I want to propose to you another solution. Okay? The solution is this. My belief is the Great Pyramid was designed as Egypt's Manhattan Project. Okay? The Manhattan Project, as you know, was a World War II project in order to build the nuclear bomb. And you can argue nuclear bomb is humanity's greatest invention ever. It took about 130,000 people over 5 to 6 years working in the United States, in Canada, in UK. And these are the best scientists in the world at this time, okay? Working collectively in order to create the nuclear bomb. And you can also make the argument that there are many working on the project who believe the Manhattan Project was about bringing peace to Earth, eternal peace. It was ultimately about mastering the secrets of the universe, channeling the power of God in order to create eternal peace, to bring God on Earth. And you could also argue that because we've had no major war after World War II, fingers crossed, they were right. Okay? So that's my argument to you. The Egyptians conceptualized and created the Great Pyramid in order to harness the power of God in order to create eternal peace on earth, to bring an end to history, to bring an end to pain, suffering, and death. So, before I provide the evidence, let me explain this theory in general, okay? And again, this is my theory. It's speculation, it's imagination, but I think it makes sense, okay? So let me explain the theory to you. The trick is the body of the pharaoh, the mummy, okay? Now, if the pharaoh was divine, and the Egyptians believed he was divine, then after his death, the body would be sacred and divine, right? But not only that, but you think about it, after the pharaoh dies, he would ascend to the heavens to become a star or a sun, right? The body then becomes a portal or a mechanism for you to communicate with the pharaoh while he's in the heavens. You could also argue the body, the mummy, could be a mechanism for you to channel the pharaoh's powers on earth. Okay? So imagine this. You have the sarcophagus. The mummy is inside, okay? Okay? And then you have the grand gallery. And inside the grand gallery, what are people doing? They are there praying and worshiping the pharaoh, which then draws the energy from the stars onto the earth. And then, because of the limestone, this energy is reflected across Egypt. So the entire nation can bask in the divine energy of the pharaoh. Okay? So Nikola Tesla said that this was a battery in order to channel free, clean energy to power Egypt. Well, what if we change this to divine energy instead? The pyramid was a battery to channel divine energy in order to power Egypt. Now let me discuss, if you are a worshiper in the Grand Gallery, what are you experiencing? Okay. Well, first of all, you're experiencing the collision, the nexus of life and death, right? Because the pharaoh, he's dead, but he's still alive through your faith. Even though you're mortal, you're in now communication with God. Okay, so this is a nexus of life and death. This grand gallery, if you actually have a chance to visit it in Egypt, okay, you'll recognize that this almost looks like a womb. Okay, all right, so it's almost like you're inside a dark space that's taking you back to the point of your birth, right? But it's also, you can also be seen as a tomb, a place where you're being buried. So this is also like another collision or conflation or nexus of being born and dying. If you were outside and you just saw the pyramid, again, you would think of it as a star that has landed on Earth, right? So this is a conflation a nexus of heaven and earth. It's a collision, a nexus of myth and reality. You can also make the argument that through divine worship, what you're really doing is you're reversing the Big Bang. You're reversing the Big Bang. You bring it into this one space. And you are creating oneness, wholeness, and completeness. You have achieved the union and the unity of all things through your faith in the Pharaoh, which gives you divine energy to be born anew, cleansed of your sins, and to cleanse others of their sins, to create a moral Egypt. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, so that's the theory. So now let me explain the idea of eternal peace. Why would the pyramid create the idea of eternal peace? Well, the first reason is, even though Egypt was an empire dynasty at this point, it was still divided culturally. Okay? There were at least 4 different cultures scattered around Egypt. And they all had their own mythologies, they had all their own religious practices, they had their own faiths. Right? So the point of this pyramid was to unite all these faiths into one singular object in the worship of the Pharaoh. If you were an Egyptian citizen, if you were in Egypt and you looked at the pyramid, you could not help but think this is God on earth. Okay? This centers your faith and it forces your obedience and your submission to a higher authority, which is the Pharaoh. Okay? That's the first reason, unity. Second is the idea of awe. So let's just say you're a powerful army and you're an enemy and you want to conquer Egypt. Well, you send your scouts to Egypt and they see the pyramids, right? The Great Pyramid. What are they seeing? They're seeing God on earth, okay? So you're not going to attack God on earth. You're going to run away. So it creates a sense of awe around the world, right? Now, the last thing is the domination of nature. So through divine inspiration, Egyptians are able to summon the Great Pyramid. And it shows the god's ability to control nature. Why is this important? Because the source of Egyptian wealth and power is the Nile River. Okay? The Nile River. And basically it's the Nile River that has made Egypt the wealthiest country in the world for thousands of years. Okay? So the thing about the Nile is, if it's in a good mood, you live a very good life because the Nile just floods the banks and leaves this rich soil, and then you just throw some seeds in it, and then you can grow all these crops very easily. Okay? It's very easy life, and you can become very wealthy that way. So if it's a good mood, then you are a very happy person. But if it's in a bad mood, okay, for example, it doesn't flood or it floods too much, you could die of starvation or of drowning, okay? So it's very important for you to be able to control the moods of the gods. Okay, and that's what the pyramid is meant to do. The Egyptian word for Egypt is Kemet, which basically means black earth. So the source of all life in Egypt is the soil, right? The black earth. And that's, okay? So let's go back to this quotation. And now we can actually understand it in a different way, right? Make your grave well furnished and prepare thy place in the west. That's fine. Now, look, death counts little for us. We're gods. We're pharaohs. We will never die, so we don't worry about death. We don't have to worry about dying, okay? Look, life is valued highly by us. What is life? Life are humans, the Egyptian people. Our concern as pharaohs is for the well-being of the Egyptian people. So that's our primary responsibility. Okay? The house of the dead, the pyramid, is for life. The pyramid is our legacy to the Egyptian people. It is our benevolence. It is our generosity. It is how we will make Egypt eternal and stable and prosperous. Okay? So that's my theory of what the pyramid is. It is really the Manhattan Project, an attempt by the pharaohs to bring eternal peace. Okay, any questions about this idea before I elaborate on it and present the evidence for it? Any questions about this? You guys don't find this controversial? What, are you confused by anything? Do you want to challenge me before I present the evidence? Okay, all right, so let me start presenting the evidence, okay?